English translation 504th contact. Saturday, 30th October 2010, 14 and 15 hours.
Here I am. After our correction work, I went to the kitchen for a coffee, because you said you would be here at 14:15 the Archers. Look here, I have something right away. An email from Blerim Berisha. He has been in contact with us for years. As you know from his questions, which I unfortunately could not answer, because I know nothing about what he wanted to know about the various ancient earthly peoples. And you said that you did not want to talk about it. Now he wants to express his condolences and sympathy to you as well as to Simyase and Plasia with this email, whereby I think that for once I may certainly do this for him. You can read the email yourself, please, if you want to.
Thanks. Reads, express my thanks to Blerim Berisha for his words of participation.
Excuse me, dear friend.
It is the memory, but it is all right now.
Then, before we move on to the Talmudic work, I would like to ask 2 or 3 more things, if it is possible for you to answer them.
Of course.
It is truly outrageous how poorly Rashid has done with regard to the translation of the scroll of Judas Ishkerioth. Did you know that from the very beginning?
We knew that, yes, we did, which is why we did not prevent the work from being produced and circulated in the way you did through the Talmud publication. We were aware, through foresight, that it was not yet the time for us to seek a translation ourselves, as we can now do together through the High Council and together with the Arahat Ather Sata level. We were aware, however, that we would still have to do this work in due course. You would not have survived the assassination attempts on you. Although you will also be in danger today when the newly translated book is published, everything has come to such a pass that certain sectarian forces have lost much of their power and no longer endanger you in the way they used to. And that Rashid has done such a bad and incorrect job in translating the scroll is because he has not been able to free himself from his Christian religious beliefs. The abandonment of his lay priesthood was an act of confusion, because he was not able to cope with what was revealed to him by the translation of Judas Iscariot's scroll. As a result, he omitted all passages and correct representations that he could not reconcile with the content of the New Testament, just as he also failed to translate many things, but simply woven into his work of translation many writings and misrepresentations from the New Testament, either literally or partially. This, of course, again resulted in enormous falsifications of the true content of the scroll, which he was, of course, aware of, but which he thought he could reconcile with his Christian faith.
It is really an enormous amount that he falsified through his delusion of faith. Thus, he also ignored the fact that 17 disciples belonged to Jmmanuel, as well as his mother and Mary Magdalene, who was his friend. He also did not translate truthfully the healings that Jmmanuel performed, but simply took the false representations from the New Testament. Equally, he also took the false story that Jmmanuel is said to have walked on the stormy sea. He also omitted the fact that the father of the traitor Judas Ishkerioth, the Pharisee Simeon Ishkerioth, had written a diatribe in the name of Judas Ishkerioth, accusing him and Jmmanuel that they themselves had caused the betrayal. And he equally concealed the fact that the same Pharisee Simeon Ishkerioth, together with a scribe, had also written a false gospel in the name of Judas Ishkerioth.
Unfortunately, this is true. But it is not surprising when it is considered that Rashid was a Christian being who could not free himself from his confused and erroneous faith, even after he had left his lay priesthood. The rule, unfortunately, is that, in relation to a religious or even religious sectarian belief, this belief has an effect on the genes and, from this side, has such a strong effect on the authoritative temporal lobe that it is not possible to act against the belief. Once faith has been established, it exerts such a compelling power on reason and reason that they are simply paralyzed and rendered inoperable. This means that human beings, once they have become addicted to a religious belief, are no longer masters of their senses in terms of their ability to make decisions about faith and all its contexts. Thus, through faith, in relation to the faith itself, and in relation to all that is connected with it, it is no longer possible to cultivate rational thought processes because religious faith makes the human being comprehensively biased and its slave. Subsequently, he unconsciously moves in his faith at every moment, with subliminal fear in case he thinks or acts against his faith. And if the unconscious thoughts of fear also give rise to corresponding feelings, then the human being becomes even more lost in his faith and does not find a way to free himself from it. This was also the case with Rashid, according to which the fear in him was predominantly to write something else than what his faith allowed him to do. So in this respect, his mind and reason were also caught in the confusion of his faith and could not assert themselves. So he was not able to act according to the given truth in order to translate the scroll truthfully, because his faith held his thoughts and feelings as if in a vice by force. So he could not break away from his faith, for truthfully he was a slave to faith. But what I am telling you in my words, you know that yourself, so it is not new to you.
Yes, I know all that, and that is why I do not understand why you chose Rashid to translate the scroll.
That was a mistake, because at that time we did not have the knowledge of the behavior of Earth humans, which we only learned through your teachings. We simply had no experience, because we did not have personal contact with Earth humans in the way we do with you. It was only through your teaching efforts that we came to know the things of the behavior and the psyche and the world of thoughts and feelings of Earth humans in the way that they actually correspond to reality and truth.
This is to be understood. But I would like to say something else with regard to religious and sectarian belief. But what I say also applies to other forms of belief. A religious, sectarian, or other belief with regard to anything can very well be dismantled and ended if it is approached in such a way that the contents of the belief are consciously and neutrally considered and analyzed. This means that when human beings consciously and neutrally consider and analyze the content of their faith, they are not doing anything to interfere with their faith. He only contemplates and analyzes it without a thought of wanting to free himself from it. By consciously and neutrally viewing and analyzing the content of faith, however, many things and facts are recognized which do not correspond to reality and not to its truth. Consequently, on the one hand the reason for this is sought, and on the other hand the effective truth behind what is conspicuously recognized as not corresponding to reality, and its truth is also sought. If this is done consciously and neutrally, then more and more facts of reality and its truth will be collected, which leads to the fact that more and more wrongdoings in faith will be recognized, and thus a predominance of facts in relation to reality and its truth will take place. As a result, these facts come more and more to the fore in the world of thoughts and feelings as well as in the world of understanding and reason, while faith and its false content recedes more and more into the background and slowly fades away. In the end, faith evaporates completely, and human beings begin to live consciously in the world of reality and its truth and in complete freedom from the enslavement of faith.
I can only say that I could not explain it better.
Thank you. Then another question. Bernadette read something in a magazine or saw something on TV about serial killers, and it was said or written that the reason for the state of serial killing in human beings is still unknown.
When a human being becomes a serial killer, he is without exception very severely psychopathically burdened. The psychopathic condition is genetic, but it can also be caused by a serious accident or by a profound illness or by drill, compulsion, and violence, and thus also by a wrong upbringing. In such cases, conscious factors are then impaired, which is why we then speak of a consciousness psychopathy, precisely in contrast to genetically conditioned psychopathy. In the case of consciousness psychopathy, we also speak of a brain psychopathy, because the brain structures are affected. It is also important to note that male and female serial killers differ in many ways, so both sexes are not the same in any way. Serial killers act for various manic reasons, which are very far-reaching and often difficult to explain psychologically. The most important reasons which give serial killers, I will stay with this term in female and male form, without exception, a certain form of satisfaction are those which I want to name specifically. 1. Thoughts and feelings of happiness. Serial killers feel themselves elevated mentally and emotionally into a state of happiness, whereby this state wants to be experienced over and over again, and consequently is killed over and over again in order to experience the state of happiness constantly. 2. Exuberance. As with the thoughts and feelings of happiness, a state of exuberance arises in serial killers through the killing of human beings, which wants to be experienced over and over again through the killing. 3. The joy of killing. In serial killers, killing creates a joyful exaltation, which in this case wants to be experienced over and over again. Dear, to have power over life and death. Serial killers of this kind experience themselves as a higher power, which can decide over life and death and also takes this literally by killing human beings. 5. Power over human beings. Serial killers of this kind kill because they sit powerfully over their fellow human beings and demonstrate this power for their own satisfaction by killing. So it is a different way than having power over life and death. Hatred. Serial killers who kill out of hatred indiscriminately murder human beings because they live out hateful thoughts and feelings against their fellow human beings for some manic reasons. Jealousy. Serial killers who kill out of jealousy murder human beings indiscriminately because they live out jealous thoughts and feelings in relation to their fellow human beings for some manic reasons. 8. Fun with killing. It is not uncommon for serial killers to enjoy killing, because their entire psychological behavior in this respect is designed in a special manic way for pleasure, pastime, diversion, entertainment, and for tension, respectively, relaxation. 9. Desire for pleasure. Serial killers look for a manic form of pleasure when killing, whereby an inner well-being and satisfaction is achieved for them. 10. Missionizing for a mania. Missionary serial killers kill as a result of their missionary craze in relation to a delusion, serial killing all fellow human beings who for some reason do not fit into or reject their missionary delusion. 11. Benefit for society. Serial killers of this kind indiscriminately kill human beings whom they assume in their delusion that they are not sustainable for society, and therefore in their manic delusion they assume that it is a gain for society if the not socially acceptable are exterminated by killing. 12. Desire for thrills. Serial killers of this kind kill indiscriminately because they are in for an ultimate thrill and a thrill that makes them shiver. 13. For profit. Gain, money, wealth. A kind of serial killer is one who kills exclusively for profit, gain, money, and wealth, making no distinction between his own family members, relatives, and strangers. What is important for them is that they can enrich themselves. Sexual satisfaction of pleasure. These are serial killers who kill for pure sexual satisfaction, often sexually abusing their victims both before killing them and after they have killed them. 15. Pure desire to kill. Serial killers of this kind kill for the sake of pure lust, which means that they follow an inner inclination. By killing, they fulfill an inner need to do or want to do something specific in order to fulfill a desire for satisfaction. 16. Revenge and retribution. Serial killers of this kind are out to seek revenge and retaliation on fellow human beings, often with manic justifications, such as general hatred of mankind as a result of real or imagined suffering, pain or injustice, etc. 17. Longing for control over the victims. Control addiction. This type of serial killer is one who has a manic longing to exercise absolute control over others, with the killing of victims usually being considered by serial killers as absolute and complete control. 8. Boredom. Serial killers who kill out of boredom do so because they find time and environment, etc., annoying, while not being able to cope with unpleasant and annoying thoughts and feelings of not being fulfilled, monotony and barrenness. So they kill serially due to lack of variety, stimulation, and entertainment. As a result of a lack of interesting occupation, a horrible inner emptiness and boredom develops, which is then compensated with serial murders. 19. Joy of torture until death. This kind of serial killer feels a high, crazy joy when they torture their fellow human beings and enjoy their pain and screams of death. I dominación. Serial killers who kill out of imperiousness do so because they have a manically excessive desire to dominate others in such a way that they stand above their being or not being and dominate their death. 21. Manic rage. Serial killers who are pathologically addicted to frenzy kill indiscriminately at every outbreak of blind frenzy, whereby it often does not matter who the victims are, so it can also affect family members. 22. Vocation delusion. Serial killers who kill out of a vocation delusion usually do so for religious, respectively sectarian, as well as demonic reasons, whereby they are under the delusion that God himself, Jesus Christ, or a saint, etc., or a demon or the devil himself orders them to kill fellow human beings. 23. Visions. Serial killers of this kind are dream visions addicted and kill because they have visionary apparitions which, through optical hallucinations, make them believe something that is not real, but which in turn stimulate or even force them to kill. 24. Pity. This kind of serial killer, often also called angel of death, has a manic, respectively pathologically exaggerated need of compassion, through which they carry a deep compassion for suffering fellow human beings, for example for the sick, in such a way that they psychosomatically experience the suffering of the others, which they cannot bear, which is why they want to put an end to the suffering of the other human being by killing them. Liberación. Serial killers of this kind act out of a manically effective liberation mania, which tells them that they have to free themselves, for example, from family members, from groups of friends, or simply from strangers, whom they assume to be deprived of freedom in every respect by them. X. Overload. Serial killers of this kind feel overburdened by any kind of things. They kill all those human beings by which they feel constricted and overburdened, which is the case with certain women, for example, who gradually give birth to babies but kill them after each birth. 27. Annoyance. Serial killers of this kind kill all those human beings who somehow get on their nerves. Getting on their nerves can be of an incredibly diverse nature. Questions or a greeting alone can be the reason for murder. 28. Bloodlust. Serial killers of this kind are seized by a blind urge to kill and intoxication by the victim's blood. These are the main forms of psychopathic serial killers, although there are many other forms, many of which are difficult to explain. In any case, serial killers are of the most severe psychopathic nature no matter what the cause of the psychopathy. It is also a fact that serial killers are without exception human beings with a manic psychopathy respectively, with a pathologically excessive and thus completely degenerated psychopathy, over which those affected by it have no control.
You said that there is a difference between men and women in serial killers.
That is correct, and it is because the female sex is much more sophisticated in such crimes and also in other criminal or felonious incidents than is the case with male criminals. The female sex is far superior to the male in this respect, as is also the case with certain other things. It is also true that there is a great difference between men and women in the victims they choose and kill, since the number of male victims is greater among women than among men, who seek their victims mainly among women. There is also a remarkable difference with regard to murder weapons. Because where men use their power or male instruments of murder for killing, women use things like poison, drugs, and medicines or knives. Less often they use firearms. What is particularly remarkable is the fact that in the case of poison, drug and medicine killings by the female sex, a great many murders and serial killings are committed with them, but they are not recognized as such and are not punished. I explained to you once before that according to our findings, in Switzerland alone, between 400 and 430 such murders take place every year, which are not recognized as such and are not punished. Special roles are played by hatred, pity, and greed for money, profit, gain, and wealth, as well as revenge and jealousy. According to our knowledge, the number of such murders in Germany amounts to an annual average of about 4,800. It must be said, however, that these murders are only rarely serial murders because they are usually single, double, or triple murders. But back to the difference between murdering women and men and serial killers and female serial killers. Because in addition to this, it has to be said that the female sex acts much more cold-bloodedly than the male sex, and accordingly also acts more unfeelingly and emotionlessly. As a result, women are also much more calculating than men in murderous relationships and are therefore better able to cover up their murderous deeds. The range of justifications for murder and serial killings is very wide, as I have already explained, but the 28 motives I have listed are particularly striking, especially in the case of serial killers. This while in the case of women who appear as single or double killers, the emphasis is on enrichment and jealousy as well as revenge, lust and fun, and this despite the fact that, unlike men, women in and of themselves murder for all possible and impossible reasons, especially if they are psychopaths. And the truth is that women can be just as violent as men. This is also a fact, as is the fact that they often outnumber men in terms of cruelty and violence. And the fact that women think very carefully about their murderous acts makes them particularly dangerous, both in terms of not being discovered and also in terms of their very safe approach to murder. For this reason, as well as for various other reasons, they are also much more successful than men at murdering and serial killing. This also means that female murderers and serial killers are more likely to hide their cruel deeds and are therefore able to murder longer in series than men. This is also due to the fact that the methods used by murdering women, whether in individual murders or serial killings, are much more sophisticated and complex than those used by men who commit the same criminal acts. This then naturally and inevitably leads to women often committing more murders or serial killings before they are caught than is the case with male murderers and serial killers.
But the fact that women outnumber men who do the same thing in terms of committing murders, and especially serial killers in every respect, has nothing to do with the female sex in general, because they are exempt from doing so. Basically, only those women are worse than men of the same kind who are manic, respectively pathologically exaggerated and degenerate psychopaths. This should probably be said, so that there is not a misunderstanding, and the whole thing is taken as a bad occasion to denigrate women in general, to depress them, and to deny them equality and equal rights.
This is correct, because only too quickly Earth humans are ready to generalize.
I was just thinking of that. But that should be enough. Another question. What do you think will come out in the USA in the upcoming elections?
As I see it, unfortunately, President Obama will be left behind. He will lose many votes. Unfortunately, the majority of the U.S. population does not recognize the fact that they have the best president in the history of the U.S., who has already achieved a lot of good and valuable things in his office. Unfortunately, the majority of the population is not yet aware of the fact that President Obama has achieved a great deal for the benefit of the people, world peace, etc. His enemies in his own people and country are as incapable of reason as are his enemies in the U.S. government, who use all means to exercise their power and are obsessed with power.
The bulk of the American people and the bulk of the entire administration is, in both cases, in my opinion, the stupidest bulk that exists on Earth. The best man that the U.S. has ever had in government is being put in the way of gagging and cutting off all the good he has done. The immature and stupid creatures of the Grow, who have neither reason nor reason to call their own, are doing everything they can to throw Barack Obama out of office. This so that bad creatures like the ones that have repeatedly misgoverned the country in the USA and started wars, which have cost countless human lives and caused enormous destruction, also to nature and the climate. And this lousy bulk is the same, living in glory and joy while the poor and the hard-working can perish, as, for example, in the fact that now state criminal elements are trying to undo the achieved health insurance reform. It is simply an unbelievable shame that such an anti-state and anti-social majority has so much to say in the USA, including, of course, the similarly oriented elements in the government.
I am in complete agreement with you on that point.
But it is true, damn it. How stupid human beings must be to not see, not recognize, and not understand the effective reality and its truth. In political terms, it is exactly the same as with religious and sectarian beliefs, from which reality and its truth can also not be recognized. In the USA, it is particularly bad in relation to both, namely in relation to religion, sectarianism, and politics. On top of this, there are the crazy machinations of various extreme right-wing and radical groups, such as the Nazi Aryan Brotherhood, the Ku Klux Klan, and the actual neo-Nazis and other racist groups, etc. It is a shame that in one country such groups are officially tolerated and supported by many of the people. But the question is whether human beings can be expected to be reasonable and good, to be under the delusion that they are masters of life and death, and therefore also support and apply the death penalty. Unfortunately, all the people in the United States who have the power of reason and who are devoted to humanity have no power, or not enough power, to change everything for the better and for good, because the minority is oppressed and outraged, as is also the case everywhere in the world. And because this is so, wars are launched criminally, warlike, murderous, and destructive break-ins are carried out in foreign countries, and roaring disaster is conjured up. The USA is a bad example in this respect all over the world.
It is necessary to talk about it again and again and to show how enormously great the evils really are. But unfortunately, it is the case that only a few human beings think about it. That is why it also takes a very long time before there is finally a change for the better and for the good. In general, Earth humans have become indifferent to the things you have mentioned, and to many other things, and consequently are no longer responsive. Unfortunately, this rarely changes, and also only ever changes for individuals when they are hit hard by fate.
Unfortunately, you are right in what you say. But tell me, what about the fact that in the USA it is finally supposed to become public that over there after the war, a large number of Nazis got all kinds of big offices, especially in the rocket industry, for the CIA and industry, etc. You told me about this 3 months ago and said that these Nazis were made innocent in the USA by simply deleting their Nazi membership and Nazi machinations from the files and not punishing their actions. As you said, many of these blamelessly made Nazis were responsible for the deaths of many human beings. And you mentioned to Werner von Braun, probably the most famous rocket engineer, that he was responsible for the deaths of 20,000 human beings, or even more.
Actually, this matter has not been dealt with in the USA until today, but the whole thing will be taken up and brought up publicly in the near future. Efforts have been underway for some time now, so it could be days or at most weeks.
Let us be surprised. We have been working on the Talmud for about 3 months now. Every week, on 3 days, we work between 3 and 7 hours. Can you tell me when we will be finished? And do you know how many hours the two of us have worked on the Talmud with your linguists and the High Council, and the Arahat Athersata level?
We will need a few more days, but in November we will have finished the whole thing. It is all a bit lengthy with the necessary back and forth between you, me, our linguists, the High Council, and the Arahat Athersata level. My notes so far add up to 184 hours of joint work, but this is not counting the time you have spent outside of the collaboration, where you have written everything in order and also incorporated the corrections made by our linguists through Florina and the additions of the Arahat Athersata level. You have been working on it for many hours every day since the 2nd of August. And every Wednesday and Friday you also added the proofreading work, which was done in the kitchen with several core group members and will continue to be done until it is really finished. That is also 3 hours of work per week. That alone is 36 hours of correction work to date. On top of that, there is your typewriting, which I have been calculating for at least 600 hours from the 2nd of August to the present day. This is in addition to the other work you had and have to do, such as the weekly and several times extraordinary shopping, writing letters, telephone calls, and administrative work, as well as the bookkeeping and financial administration, which you do for several group members, etc.
What I do for free, which should be said. Your list is certainly sufficient, but I would also like to say that it is not my job, and there is nothing extraordinary about it. Others also do their job every day, like Andreas, Bernadette, and Eva, who are always working hard every day. And they often do this until late at night and even on Sunday. They do this even though they are not paid for it, because the Figu Association is not profitable, and therefore cannot give any remuneration. And because they work so much, they almost have to steal their free time. Of course, the other core group members also have to be mentioned in terms of their work performance, but Eva, Andreas, and Bernadette stand out in particular. Andrea, Christina, Daniel, Daniela and Piero, Simone, Bridget, Günther, Guido, as well as Stefan, Michael, Atlantis, Pius, Patrick, Barbara, Jacobus, Louis, Freddie, Silvano, Madeleine, Elizabeth G., and Erhard, Philia, Wolfgang, Natan, and Karin, both Christian and Hans-Georg, of course, also do their part. Cuneo must not be forgotten either. Without all of them and their firm collaboration, it would not be possible to achieve all that Figu does. Atlant is suspended from all work until further notice for professional reasons, as Elizabeth M., Bruni, and Connie are suspended from work due to illness. But what you say about ending the Talmud Emmanuel in November is widely said. November has 30 days. And even when our direct collaboration is over, we still have to do the weekly correction work in the kitchen, twice a week, after which I have to clear everything up on the computer. Then there are the corrections by Bernadette and Marianne, after which I do the last correction work on the computer. Only when all this work with the last corrections is done, Bernadette can process everything in such a way that the book can be made from it, but only when everything has gone through the official last series of corrections by the correctors who are specifically responsible for this task, whereby I only correct the corrections, and Bernadette then does the final correction work on the computer and makes the book ready for printing.
What you say about November is of course correct. From our side, it will still take about 5 days if no further instructions of the Arahat Athersata level are given. And concerning all the writing and proofreading work until the work is finished, that it can finally be printed, that is very interesting to know because, actually, I did not know how the whole book production is handled.
Let us be surprised at the last steps of the final work for the Talmud. It cannot go on forever.
Arahat Athersata, and we are taking it very seriously.
I have no objection to that. On the contrary, I am very glad that the Talmud is now in the best of form and is also translated correctly and accurately. For this, I would like to express my deep gratitude to you, your writers and language experts, as well as to the level Arahat Athersata. I think that all our members of the core group and the passive group also express their gratitude to you and the plane and to your scribes and linguists.
On behalf of all, I thank you. And I must say that we are also glad that everything has been put right and that a true translation of the scroll has been made. After your health collapse in 1982, this seemed questionable to us, because your condition was extremely precarious and not conducive to having much hope. It is all the more gratifying to see that your condition has improved again and that you have recovered well, contrary to expectations.
It just happened. I can also say no more about it.
You say it so simply, but I know very well what troubles and hardships you had.
I do not want to talk about that.
Then we should end the conversation now because we have other things to do.
Clear.